What would cause God to leave his own house? We've been talking about that in this 10-part series. If you're curious about what that is, stay tuned. So the next thing that I noticed is the stealing from God, the disrespecting God, the impatience, abuse, and intimidation. Now that's a lot, but this is what was going on.
Eli's own sons were nothing but trouble. They didn't know God, and could not have cared less about the customs of priests among the people. Ordinarily, when someone offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant was supposed to come up and, while the meat was boiling, stab a three-pronged fork into the cooking pot. The priest then got whatever came up on the fork. But this is how Eli's sons treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh to offer sacrifices to God. Before they had even burned the fat to God, the priest's servant would interrupt whoever was sacrificing and say, "Hand over some of that meat for the priest to roast. He doesn't like boiled meat. He likes his rare." If the man objected, "First, let the fat be burned, God's portion. Then take all you want," the servant would demand, "No, I want it now. If you won't give it, I'll take it." It was a horrible sin these young servants were committing, and right in the presence of God, desecrating the holy offerings to God.
So Eli's sons, they were stealing from God. And so what was traditional is, again, the priests, it's their job to make sure that things go on in the house of God the way that God ordained. And so what was customary is that people would bring their offerings to God, meat. Meat was part of the offering that they would bring. And when they would bring meat offerings, they were to render the fat on the meat. And then once the fat was rendered, they were to put it in a pot and boil it. Okay. That is the way that they were supposed to do their offering. Right. Okay. And so basically it was the priest's job to oversee this and make sure it went, according to what God instructed. Okay. So once they put the meat in the pot and it started to boil, the priest was to take basically a fork, it says a three-pronged, stick, basically. And he was supposed to dig into the pot and scoop some out. And then whatever came up is what was the priest's, allotment, basically. And so now, mind you, so this is basically, it's kind of like tithes and first fruits, right? So first fruits means the first of what you have, right? And the tithe means 10% of what you have, right? And so it was basically when the person renders the fat, that is the first fruits, because it's the first thing that's done, and that belongs to God. The fat basically gets rendered off. Okay, so then in addition, the tithe was basically when the priest would scoop up, their what they could get on the fork or whatever. And then that would be used for the house of God, basically to support the priest. Okay. Now, here's what they were doing. Okay. They were supposed to be overseeing this process. And so instead of allowing the people to render the fat, before they could render the fat, they would say, "Give us some of that meat," because Eli prefers it rare. Okay. Now, mind you, eating meat rare is a defilement, right? So you're lying on him, number one, and saying he wants to eat it rare, because you're not supposed to be doing that regardless. Okay. But they're lying on him. Okay. Because they're basically just stealing. It's basically just them stealing. Okay. And they're using Eli's good name to be able to steal from people, right? Basically, they're lying to them to manipulate them into giving it to them, right? So most people, I'm assuming, we're just saying, okay, whatever, if that's what Eli wants, not thinking, number one, that's not godly for you to be eating raw meat. So they should have questioned that, right? Number two, they would just, again, he's the priest, so I'm just going to obey. And this is so much of what happens in the church these days, where pastors tell people to do stuff and it's not in alignment with the word. It's not in alignment. So anyway, I'm assuming that most of the people would do it because scripture basically says if a man, objects basically. And so I'm assuming that not everybody was objecting, but apparently some of them were. And if they would object and basically say, let me render the fat first, what they were saying, they were basically like, it reads as if they know these two guys are corrupt. And they're just like, I still want to honor God. So at least let me render the fat, right? I know this is shady. You should not be taking this meat off of this thing before it gets to the boiling pot. I already know that. But at least let me render the fat and do the first fruits portion to God, right? And it says their response was, if you don't give it to me now, I'm going to take it. So you got there. First of all, you're intimidating them. Right? You're intimidating them that you're going to take it. You're impatient because you want what you want when you want it, like a child. You're disrespecting God because, again, these people are coming to the house of God. They're coming for their offering. They're trying to, honor God, and you're dishonoring him, and you're forcing them to do the same thing by intimidating them. Right? And you're stealing from God because this is his first fruits, and you're telling them don't render the fat. Don't give God what's his. Because it's not even that. You're still in the first fruits, and you're not waiting until it goes to the pot. So you're taking what portion you think you should have instead of taking what comes up off the fork, which is the portion God says you can have. So you're stealing from God. And so they were disrespecting God. And then they were demanding that they should get the first fruits instead of God. And that's what these pastors are doing. They are stealing from God. It has come out over and over and over again that these pastors, they are taking people's offering and then they're going and buying jets. They're taking people's offering and they're buying big houses. They're taking people's offering and they're going and doing, lavish weddings and all kinds of stuff. And when they first started doing this, it was like, good for them. We don't want, the pastors that, take care of their flocks to be, starving and, not making enough money and stuff like that. When this first started happening, it was like, okay, I'm not necessarily going to fault them. Okay, just because they have a lot of money. But then it's like, as you start to look at it, you start to realize the fact that they have a lot of money and the sheep are broke. That is what lets you know they don't have a lot of money because God is blessing them. They have a lot of money because they're stealing from God. They're stealing the tithe. And they're stealing the first fruits. And that's what's going on. This is what's happening. These are the things that were happening that caused Ichabod, that caused God to leave his own house. This is what the Lord was talking about. This is what he was telling me. This is what is on his heart. He wants his people to know. Number one, I left because he didn't know. A lot of people don't know he left. A lot of people don't know he's not in these churches. Now they're not all of them. There's not all of them, but I am telling you right now, 99% of the churches that exist, God is not there. He's not there. Because people are not treating it like his house. So he does not feel at home there, and he has left. So number one, he wants people to know that he's left. Anyone who doesn't know that he's left, he wants them to know he left. And number two, he wants them to know why he left. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and we saw a lot of the people from the church that we used to go to. And one of the questions that they were asking is, why did you leave? Because the way God instructed us to leave, he instructed us to make it very quick and clean and swift because of the witchcraft. I was telling you about the witchcraft, that back and forth where, it was making us be indecisive, and we would, believe we heard God, and then we would, believe that maybe we didn't hear God. And so in order to, cut that off, he instructed us to leave very abruptly, right? And so, of course, the people that we were in leadership over, they did not understand why we left, right? And so that incident happened a couple of weeks ago, and again, this is over a couple of weeks where God has been speaking this to us. And so he was letting me know, just like they don't understand why you left, they don't understand why I left. That's what he was telling me. He was like, my people don't understand why I left. They don't understand why my churches are like this. They don't understand why it's so bad. And he was letting them know, this is why it's so bad. Because you think that you're going to church. You think that you're going to the house of God, and you're not. See, any Christian would, if you were to ask them right out, flat out, a genuine believer that loves God, if you were to ask them right out, flat out, would you like to go to a gay club with me? They would tell you no. If you ask them, would you like to go, to a club or to, something ungodly, they would tell you no. But this is what these churches are. And it's just like the sons of Eli, how they used Eli's good name to intimidate people and manipulate people. That's what they have done with the house of God. They're using God's name because they're trying to lure, these wolves are trying to lure the sheep in there so that they can destroy them. But these are not houses of God. These are the den of these wolves. And so this is what the Lord was on his heart was, I want you to let my people know that these churches aren't churches. They're not my house. And this is just so important because it just really grieves my heart to think of God not even having a house. And another thing that the Lord was just letting me know, because there is something going on, not just with me, but with a lot of people these days, that people are not able to afford housing. And so there's just a lot of people that are living in their cars, living in hotels, living in storage rooms, just don't have a place to live. And this is just, I was just talking to the Lord about that and just being really grieved and just praying for those, because y'all know my situation. I still don't even have a home. God has blessed me to be able to, have family to live with right now. But, I was evicted from my home. And so it's just been a really difficult season. And I was just talking to God about that because it's just been so hard to, go so long without having a home of my own. And so as he was walking me through this scripture, it was like I was seeing that he doesn't have one either. And so what's happening to his people, to his remnant in this season, is a reflection of what's happening to him too. Just like we got evicted from our homes, he got evicted from his. And so this is what was on his heart, for him to let us know that it wasn't just that I left, it was that I was put out. Things were invited into my house that I can't, God can't be in the same place as sin. He can't do it because he's holy. He couldn't stay. And so it's just really, really sad. It's really sad when you are understanding the heart of God and you're understanding how he's feeling and what this word Ichabod is really meaning for a time such as this. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime, God bless you on your journey to freedom.